Hello, and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, divorce support for dads, where we help dads create a healthy and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude Sandoval, and I'm your host. I created this podcast and the Divorced Advocate community as a result of my own high conflict divorce, and because you as a dad deserve all the resources necessary to thrive through this challenging time. I encourage you to check out our website at thedivorcedadvocate.com, where there are resources that correspond to this episode, as well as free access to our membership community, where you will find live meetings, free workshops and courses, private discussion groups, and more. And now on to this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode. I'm so pleased that you're here, and I'm excited to talk to my friend and colleague again today. We're going to be discussing why it is incredibly important not to self-isolate and to also reach out and get the help, particularly during this holiday time, whether you're married or you're divorced or whatever your relational status. It is incredibly important to just not go it alone. And so my guest today is, most importantly, also a father of two children, as well as the creator of greatdad.com. This is a site written by dads for dads, so I highly recommend checking it out. It is awesome. It's got a lot of phenomenal resources. And also the creator of the podcast Great Dad Talks. Prior to fatherhood, he held director, VP, C-suite roles in major companies like Visa International, Yahoo, Unilever, McCann Erickson, and Ogilvy and Mather. Please welcome my friend and colleague, Paul Banas. Paul, welcome.
Jude,
hey, it's
great to see you.
Yeah, great to chat with you again. We got to have a really great conversation last week and reconnect. And those who have been listening to podcasts for a while know that we talked last year, and you were on the show last year, and just have all kinds of phenomenal wisdom, which I sincerely appreciate. You know, I guess that comes with some of our gray that we've got going on.
The gray hair or the no hair.
Yeah, for those of you not watching and just listening, I know we don't look as good as we sound. We've got a face for podcasts, I guess. Or I should speak for myself. You're a handsome man, Paul. But anyway, we're digressing pretty quickly here. So first, let's just start out. Share a little bit about yourself, and share a little bit about what led you to start greatdad.com and all those awesome resources on there.
Yeah, I had a very fun international career. Worked with Unilever overseas, and had my last job was at Yahoo doing international work, traveling all over the world. But unfortunately, or fortunately, my wife also had a very similar, very demanding career. And we had one child. Our first was a daughter, and we were lucky to have grandma come and stay with us. And she did a lot of that extra work. But when we had our son, you know, it was really clear that with both of us traveling around the world all the time, we were going to either have to outsource our parenting, or one of us was going to have to stay at home. And I was at a point in my career where I was a little burnt out, and I kind of took a step off the merry-go-round. Maybe at that point, I didn't realize that I would never go back to that, you know, that high level, corporate world again. But I knew it was a really important time for one of us to have something that was a lot more flexible. So I decided to stay at home, and that was 15 years ago.
Wow. That's fantastic. And then how old are your children now?
They're 18 and 22.
Okay. So you've kind of seen that, like that whole growth time and that time, and you've been able to spend that quality time with them, right? Yeah.
So at first it was really staying at home with my son, and, you know, feeding, cleaning, all that stuff. And then kind of morphed into working from home while they were at school. And that in itself is a lesson. I think every parent usually realizes there's a point where they start developing a little bit of maturity. And that's when you kind of have to backfill, because you have to be your own person at the same time you're as a parent. And for me, it was really great to have the flexibility of being able to, you know, dial up the work when they were busy, but then dial it down when I wanted to be more actively involved with what they were doing.
Right. Which has gotten infinitely easier to do these days than probably when you started. And that was the case when I was married too. And we did some of that too. Being a self-employed and an entrepreneur, was able to make those flexible schedules and the ability to really spend the quality time with the kids, which is really just a phenomenal thing. But anyway, so that's awesome. It just goes to say that you have an immense amount of knowledge, which we already know. I already know from reading your website and our conversations. But let's chat about what we were talking about, and this kind of is just for the audience listeners. This kind of grew out of our conversation last week when we were finishing up and talking about the holidays and about how dads oftentimes will just not do what they need to do to take care of themselves, will kind of maybe isolate themselves, not reach out and get the help that they need, whether they're married or divorced or going through a divorce. And that we still have this mentality, even though it's getting better in society, that we have to suck it up, that we have to be strong, that we can't break down, etc. So let's talk about that, and let's start with you. You made a great comment, and I hope that we can recreate what you said just before in talking about ways in which we can identify during the holidays what's important to us, and then what we can do with that. So talk a little bit more about what you were saying right before we started recording.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, and you and I have talked about this before, is being aware that there are a lot of pressures, and the holidays really bring out a lot of expectations. One of those times of the year that really, the Hallmark card, all the pictures, all the ads are about a happy family, all just loving each other and just, complete land of
You mean
unicorns.
It's not like that in every house all the time in the holidays? I didn't know that. Yeah, right. Come to my house in the morning with 3 teens, right? Yeah. Ho, ho, ho. Get the hell out of the house. Let's go.
Yeah. So I think that's important to note right away, is that it's not going to be like every TV show you have. It's physically impossible to live out all the fantasies that we have about anything. And Christmas is really, the holidays just in general, really laden with a lot of those expectations. So one of the things that we were talking about before was the idea of trying to figure out, especially I think if you're a divorced dad and you're now moving away from the traditions you had maybe last holiday season, going into this new holiday season, knowing that there could be a lot of triggers there for you. And maybe you're not the most emotional person in the world, but there are triggers awaiting you when certain things come up. Maybe you always did, shopping for a tree together. That was a big family activity. Maybe at the time you didn't even enjoy it. Maybe it was a thing that you like, I want to get home. I've had a hard day. I don't even want to do the tree thing. But now suddenly you don't have a tree, and you've got to go and get a tree by yourself. And you've got to think through what those different experiences are going to be. So the one tip that I think that's important for dads, whether they're divorced or not, is trying to figure out what's important to you about the holiday season. What are the things that you love and have been really pleasurable things for you and your kids, and then deciding which one of those you're going to recreate in your new life, or if you're married and happily married, maybe there are things that you've been doing for years but don't bring you and your spouse joy. You just have been doing them on autopilot. So decide which ones of those are important, and then try to put the focus on those, rather than really getting upset and frustrated about something that maybe didn't happen like it used to, but isn't even important to you. It wasn't even something that you enjoyed.
Right. That's just reframing your thought process around that. And I remember the first probably 2 or 3 holiday seasons that I went through in lamenting the fact that I'm not able to wake up with maybe my daughters on Christmas again, or that we don't have the same people around and family there to celebrate, because now we're fragmented because her family's with her and not with me. And so, but once I started to get away from that and do what you described, which is, okay, well, what is important? And then what do I want to do? It's almost like you've got this opportunity to redesign your life as you wanted it to be. And so then, kind of shedding away some of those things. And then the big one was like creating new things that were really exciting, because that was really cool for the kids then to have new traditions that maybe they didn't have before.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very common. not to, you may not be in total discord with your spouse, but she may not want to, do something that like ice skating. She's not into ice skating, so you've never made it really a family activity, even though you and your kids love ice skating. It's never been a thing done around the holidays. Why not make it a thing around the holidays? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's you'll be surprised then. And so I've got the luxury of looking back right after almost a decade now of divorce. You'll be surprised at the stuff that you thought was important, that they don't even remember, and the stuff that you started to do and that you didn't think was important that they remember, and they go, "Oh wow, that was really fantastic, and that was really great."
Yep.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, another thing that I think is important is seeing where you can still create some of those family moments. Not all divorces are horribly acrimonious, and they don't always end in a total schism. Sometimes, your brother-in-law still loves you, or your ex-mother-in-law still likes having you around and appreciates the fact that you're still the father of her her grandchildren. And it doesn't take, there's certainly situations where you could never imagine ever seeing all those people again in the same room, but there are plenty of opportunities for calling them up and saying, I'm still part of this family. We're still inextricably linked for the rest of our lives because of our kids. And I want to be there on Christmas Eve, or I want to be there on Christmas Day, or I want to be part of whatever this activity is. And I think if your ex-spouse is, rational about it, they would also realize the value of having you there, even if it's just for that one family thing that is a continuity point for the kids.
Yeah, that's a great point, Paul, because oftentimes, and this goes back to the isolating and then feeling uncomfortable about stuff, and maybe even in some circumstances hiding, right? Like hiding from something that's difficult to do, but you really need to. I mean, you really need to step up and even if it is what you just described, like maybe send that text saying, "Hey, I would like to connect with you," or maybe I would like to get together and go sledding with the kid, whatever it might be, so that you can try to start to build those bridges, if you will, during this time. It's a good time instead of just leaving them be, because if you leave them be, they could just wither and die on the vine, where that, the other person might not be feeling like, maybe I should reach out, maybe I shouldn't reach out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think feeling like it could be awkward or something could get in your way and sabotage you having a connection point that is, most importantly, a connection point with your kids, but shows this ongoing generational connection that, life is long. You're going to end up seeing your ex-spouse and your ex-in-laws and everything for the rest of your life at the marriages and everything else, to the extent that you can try to keep those relationships civil and still developing a history. That's going to all be valuable and will come back to help you out later on in life.
Right. And even if it doesn't work out as you might have thought, or if it's different than what it was, at least you're putting into the mind of the person that you care about the relationship, that you care about the dynamic. And even in cases where maybe there is, I want to say, an ex that's poisoning the relationship or making things difficult and challenging, at least you're putting, like, straightforward and directly putting that thought that, hey, this person is at least trying, and whatever their response is, you can't control. It's up to them, but at least you've made that effort and you've put that out there, and you can feel comfortable with that, and you don't know what's going to happen with it.
Yeah. That is so important. You can't control other people's emotions and their reactions, but you can control how you face that situation, and you can do a good thing, or try to do a good thing.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that in the context of the holidays and the kids, and what you can control and what you can't control, and not hiding and isolating yourself from the fact that things are going to be different during this holiday season. and communicating that with the kiddos, because so we're kind of focused right now on ourselves and being dads and whatnot, but the kiddos are kind of going through their whole own thing of uncertainty and maybe grieving that it's different, et cetera. How can we help them through this by not hiding and isolating ourselves, but engaging with them?
Yeah, well, I think the type of thing of like trying to invite yourself or try to be involved in those bigger family activities is a proof point. Whether the people want you or not, or actually do invite you, your kids know that you were there, you wanted to be there, you were trying to make an effort, and that's important. But I think also being very open with them, certainly you can't do this with the really small ones, but pretty early on, you can say, what do they want to do? You can have a conversation about what things are important for them to do with you during the holidays. How do they want to spend time with you? Especially those pre-adolescent years where they really want to be with you, and you can set the tone for what's going to happen as they reach their teenage years. Quite often, we're kind of ignorant of the fact that the span of our real active parenting as shapeshifters is only from like maybe 3 to about 12, maybe even that's late in some cases because kids mature so much faster nowadays. But it's in those years where you can set those traditions, you can set those intentions with them together. And then when they become adolescents, they still expect those same things that they used to do pre-adolescence, even though now they're moving away from you, but they still will pick and choose among those things that were really important that they did with you during that time.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Jude with a quick reminder about the Divorced Advocate Foundation for Fathers, which is our nonprofit that helps dads through divorce with legal education, free or reduced cost coaching, and mental health resources. If you own a business or know someone who does, there's an easy way to help by connecting credit card processing through our partner program. Part of the fees go straight to the foundation with no added cost to the business, and 98% of businesses are actually able to save money on their processing fees. It's a win-win. So if you know a business that accepts credit cards, get them in touch with me by sending a warm introduction email to jude@thedivorcedadvocate.com or give me a call directly at 720-255-1021. Right, exactly. An example I have is we schedule time to put up our tree all together and hang the ornaments and do all of that. And while they're not as engaged, it's not as exciting to them now. Yeah. It's still exciting to me, but it's not exciting to them. But they still want to do it, even if they're grumbling or they're arguing with each other. They still like my oldest was gonna. I was like, well, she has a crazy schedule. She's 17 and into everything in high school. And I said, well, we're going to do it. And she said, well, I don't want to miss that. It's like, oh man, that's indicative of exactly what you just described. That's something that we've been doing forever, a tradition. And while hasn't been always engaged or whatever, all of the time, or they've been fighting with each other, they still want that, right? That's still a source of security and safety for them. That's especially during the holidays, that is incredibly important. The other thing I wanted to get your feedback on is also communicating with them, especially in the beginning. So like now mine know the routine and the schedule, but in those first maybe couple few years where you're getting used to a new parenting schedule, is it important to chat with them, kind of lay the groundwork? This is kind of how it's going to be. This is when you're going to be with your mom, or this is when you're going to be with me, and this is what the break is going to look like, just so that they have some ability to kind of conceptualize what the new schedule is going to look like.
Oh yeah, I think that's really important. Is setting the tone. Do not overpromise. Do not suggest things, gifts, events, or otherwise that you're not going to follow through on. Even more important during the holidays, by saying, during the holidays we're gonna go ice skating, and then you don't follow through. They remember stuff like that. So that is really That's very important. And we all know that kids thrive on structure. And that's one of the reasons for me, I'm so big on traditions, family dinners, all those things that bring structure to our lives. And we as adults, maybe naively, I think sometimes think, oh, we don't need all that. We can break free of all those traditions. They're just a weight. But when you find the ones that are pleasurable and joyful and have meaning for you, and you set those intentions and follow them through, that's great for adults, I think, for once, but for kids who just need structure, dependability, safety, like you say, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And as dads in our masculine nature and in a masculine feminine dynamic, structure and is kind of our thing, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of our thing. So you can still continue to provide that, and it's really important. And maybe sometimes, and I know I hear this a lot, sometimes this is a wake up call for the dads to start working towards that. Maybe they weren't quite as good. They've abdicated that responsibility within a relationship in their marriage, and now they're having to do that. And so if you haven't been doing that, get back, get back to your original design, if you will, to start working on that, because your kids, not only during the holidays, but your kids are going to need that going forward, because they're going to have two households. It's going to be different. There's going to be a different dynamic. And that's something that you're going to have to provide for them, is that structure, because then it goes to that safety. They need to know that creates a feeling of safety for them with having that structure.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that it's not a black and white issue. It's not like I screwed up and I can't get it back. It is, the road of parenting is very, very long. You can make mistakes. You can not show up. You can fail. You can do whatever. But if you are constantly late, if you're constantly blowing off your night with the kids, or you're not showing up or whatever, that's when you have a problem. So don't be hard on yourself if every once in a while, you have to work late at work or whatever the emergency is and you can't do it. But if that becomes an ongoing thing, it's twice in a week or twice in a month, or you may get a feeling of what that number is. But the important thing is consistency, and with a little bit of failure.
Right. Well, let's talk about that too, because making mistakes is human. Yeah. And we're going to make, we make lots of mistakes as dads, and we're going to make a lot more mistakes. And I make mistakes every single day. And then having those emotions through this too. So, through the holidays, and also this, for me, I feel is another important thing, is communicating with them the emotions that are going on, or the mistakes that you might be making. And, do you feel like it's okay to say to them, hey, like, I've never been through this before either, so we'll get through it together, but I made a mistake, or I probably going to make a mistake. I'm feeling sad, or I'm uncertain also about what's going on. I mean, is that healthy?
Well, I think there's a spectrum here. It certainly depends on how old your kids are, how much you can share with them. Really good rule of thumb, and anybody who's been divorced or anybody going through marriage problems and relationship issues is guilty of this, or is guilty at least of being tempted into this, is not to use your child as your therapist. So yeah, I'm really sad saying that to your daughter or your son, help me be less sad. That's a lot to put on a kid. But like you say, we're going through this. It's all brand new to me too. I love you the most in the world, and I will do anything to make sure that, this is as the least uncomfortable as it can be. How can we do that together? I think that's perfectly rational. But taking, using your child for an hour and talking to them about how horrible this is and how sad it is and how, you messed up, that's different than saying, I'm sorry I'm sorry we didn't get to do this thing that I was hoping to do, or, whatever that apology is, where you admit you're wrong, is different than a global, crying it out session with your child.
Yeah. And you definitely don't want to do that, but you definitely also don't want to suppress your emotions. And again, this is the idea that we started with in talking about sucking it up as a dad or a man, and that we can't show emotion, or some of these traditional mindsets around what we should and what we shouldn't be doing. It took me a very long time to ever even cry in front of my daughters. And then now it was my daughter's birthday last night. And I was, it's talking about my oldest, and she was my first baby. And I was telling her, like, you made me a dad for the first time, and I appreciate that. And I've loved the 17 years. And then I said, I was looking at pictures. She said, it's the first thing she said, "Did you cry, Daddy?" Because now they know that when I get, nostalgic, I just get, all this emotion, and I'm like, it's okay. Yeah. Is that what it is too? Okay. I'll have to tell her that too. So it's funny now, because before it was stoic, right? I was not going to show them emotion. I was going to show them if I'm angry, if I'm sad, whatever it was. I was just super dad. And that just was not healthy, because it was eating me up from the inside. So that's why I say it's okay if emotions overcome you, and they say, "Well, what's wrong?" "Well, I'm just feeling sad." It's okay. It's okay. Because then it gives them permission to be sad also.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think we're taught in our work lives, and certainly through our 20s and 30s, like, you got to be cool, you got to be a little bit withdrawn, you can't be vulnerable, because we aren't going to like that. And later on in life, you realize that there's a persona you can put on at work, and maybe that's important. Maybe you have to be a certain way at work every day because that culture demands it. That does not mean that you have to have that same persona when you're at home. And it's sad that it usually takes men until their 40s or 50s to realize that a lot of the relationships they have that are not related to money and career are the strongest with the people with whom they can share their vulnerabilities. And because they've been told in their career and their work life and their professional progression that they never wanted to cry or be sensitive at all, they miss out on that opportunity to connect with men at maybe an earlier age of the 20s and 30s about the problems that they go through, the vulnerabilities. It doesn't mean you have to be, every conversation, every beer you have is going to end up with you, crying with your pals, but showing some vulnerability makes you actually more attractive as a friend versus as a work colleague.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal comment. And this came up. I just had a workshop earlier this morning, and that was one of the things we were talking about is we learn how to perform in a work environment, how to show up as men. Yeah, exactly. But we don't learn how to then show up within, or I shouldn't say all of us, but a lot of us who didn't have parents that talked about that or shared or were good models for that, don't teach or learn. They don't teach you, or you don't learn how to show up in that personal relationship with your spouse and your children. And what you just said, we conflate the different things, and it's very confusing, and then it's frustrating, and then it's difficult for our spouse and our children because we think we're doing good because that's what we've been taught, right, but we're not. And then it's really hard to work on and show those emotions, right?
You can't lead your family the same way you lead a small company.
Yeah, right. There's that in Love and Logic. I love Love and Logic. It's a parenting technique, and for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's based upon showing love and empathy to children while allowing them to make lots of choices and hopefully make lots of mistakes so that they understand the difference of choices. And so part of that, one of the types of parenting, they describe different types of parenting, is like the drill sergeant, which is typically the men of the family, like dads, because we just are, like we talked about earlier, we're wanting it to be in order, and we've got a way in which we want to do it, and we're just going to do it, and that's the way it is. And let me tell you, that just does not work well. Anybody listening, I'm sure knows that. I'm sure you know that too. So it's and then if you have 3 daughters like I do, that completely gets blown out of the water, because then they're completely different on how they react and how they go about things. So hopefully the next time around with a future spouse, I'll have a better idea or understanding that about that drill sergeant and that linear process, because it's not linear.
Mm-hmm.
So what other things, Paul, do you feel like dads struggle with in the isolating during the holidays, but in general, that we haven't talked about yet, and what is a tip for them to overcome that?
Well, we know there's just a crisis. There's a mental health crisis going on in the United States. I mean, it's probably it existed before the pandemic. It's exacerbated by the pandemic, and men are certainly a lot more vulnerable to being alone through because of the pandemic, but also just the way we're more wired. We're more willing to self-isolate than women are. And to get ahead of that, it's really important to people who are happier and healthier in their later lives are the ones who stay connected. And, now is not a bad time. We're already into the first week of December to think about how that's going to affect us during the holidays. And there are so many resources out there for us to kind of break out of that isolation. Hopefully you do have some guy friends that you can talk to and make sure now, it's the time of our call is December 8th is call some of those people up and set dates for around the holidays. So you're going out, maybe you're getting together with their families. Maybe if you say to a good friend, hey, I'm kind of bummed out, I'm going to be alone on Christmas Eve, a lot of families will, take you in. And that is it's a smart strategy. Maybe that sounds a little awkward to you, but I know in our family around the holidays, around Thanksgiving and around Christmas, all of our single friends, our divorced friends, I always do an outreach to them and make sure that they're not alone, because it can be a real difficult time. But in some cases, we don't know that they're going to be alone. And we've heard stories of, guys who are spending a lot of these holidays just sitting at home alone.
Yeah.
And if you've got a friend network, it doesn't have to be that way. And I think groups like the groups you run, staying in touch with people over the holidays, finding a community you can share. There's a lot of free resources with group coaching where people are running groups like yours that where men can at least share their feelings, which goes a long way. But I think intentionally looking at your calendar, now look at some of those dates, know where you're going to really not want to be at home alone, and set some things up now is a really good idea.
To hear the rest of this episode and access the corresponding resources, visit thedivorcedadvocate.com and become a member of our community. It's free to join and will provide you with the resources you deserve as a divorced or divorcing dad. Thank you for listening. God bless, and I'll talk with you next week.